I always say creativity is a team sport because life is a team sport. You are not designed to do any of this stuff on your own. And even if you did, what would be the point of it all? If you made all of this stuff, you achieved everything, but you don't have other people to share that with, and you don't have other people who went on that journey with you, it sounds boring and sad and lonely. And I think that like when you realize, oh, maybe the reason I haven't solved this problem is because I, for some reason, convinced myself that I have to do it myself. Yeah, that's probably part of it.
Welcome to the Dwayne Kerrigan Podcast, and I'm your host, Dwayne Kerrigan. With 35 years in business and close to 30 ventures across 12 industries, I've seen a lot. Amid the celebrity allure of entrepreneurship, many exceptional entrepreneurs remain shadowed. Here, I team up with these hidden talents to unveil their challenges and successes. Dive in with me to unearth entrepreneurial gems, learn from our experiences, and get educated. Hey everybody, welcome to the show. Thanks so much for tuning in. If you didn't catch the first part of this episode, go back to last week, take a listen. Here's the second piece. We hope that you guys are getting everything that you need out of these conversations. We appreciate you tuning in and listening and sharing and subscribing and all that kind of stuff. Thanks so much, guys. Have an amazing day and week. And we will chat with you soon. Enjoy.
This morning. So yeah, the 5 things an idea needs. The first thing that every idea needs is a chance. And we've kind of touched on that. Like your brain needs to believe that it's possible for it to come up with ideas, or else it's going to defend the belief that it can't. And you're going to end up cutting yourself off from ideas. And not only that, but when you tell yourself, I'm not creative, when you tell yourself that again and again and again, and that becomes a core part of your identity, your brain wants to protect that identity. And so then when you do have an idea, your brain kind of goes, no, shut it down. Don't show him this, dude. Remember, he said he doesn't want to see that. Right. And so that one is about opening yourself up to the possibility that, hey, you know what? I am a creative person. I've done this before. I can do this again. Every idea needs a chance.
My takeaway on that one was, and for the listener was like, it's possible that your conscious mind doesn't actually see what your subconscious created. I'm making this shit up, but I'm just trying to see if I got this right. So just for clarification, but it's like, because you've built in this defense mechanism of, protecting your identity, protecting yourself, I'm not good at this, I can't do that, whatever. The subconscious mind creates something and then automatically deletes, distorts it before it really filters into, the conscious mind. Is that kind of?
Yeah. And I think that the way that you do that, like the way that you unravel that belief is by looking at it. It's like the ghost in Mario, like the ghost in Mario can only chase you when your back is to it. And then when you turn, the ghost has to stop. And I think that that's true of like a lot of these beliefs that chase us around. It's because we don't stop and just look at it for 2 seconds and go, is this actually true? Is this thing that I'm believing true? And when you go, I'm not creative, well, then you have to define what creative is. You go, well, creativity is just making something new. Have I ever made something new before? Yeah. And I can point out a million examples to when you've done that. So you go, okay, so that belief actually isn't true. So what is the thing? And then you kind of narrow in on it and you start to realize, oh, a lot of this is just insecurity that's like packaged up as a belief, but it's not based on anything. It's sort of like, I threw out my back years ago. And then because of that, now my whole like nervous system, anytime I get near a back injury, it just locks up my whole back because it's like, we don't want that to happen again. And we do that with our beliefs too, where like one bad thing happens and then we're like, I'm going to build a whole protective system around, I don't want to feel that way again. And that way is often like, I don't want to feel insecure. I don't want to feel embarrassed. I don't want to feel like a failure. And so then we create all these beliefs around it. But if you actually start looking at the belief and you go, okay, what is like, I tell this to my kids all the time. If they're playing a sport or they're struggling with an instrument or something, I go, Dad, I can't do this. I go, you can do this. Like you've done this before. Let me show you a video of you doing this last week. And I'm like, right now what you're actually struggling with is like, this feels really hard. And that's okay. Like it's okay for things to feel really hard. And it's okay to feel like I might not be able to do this today, but you can do this thing. And the same thing is true for creativity and for coming up with ideas. Like if you go, well, I'm not creative, then your brain just kind of shuts that down. But if you go, you know what, let's just like relax a little bit. Let's take a look at it. Let's take our ego out of the picture. Do I have the ability to solve problems? Do I have the ability to find new inputs and ask for advice and look for new techniques and put all those things together? Yeah, I can probably do that. Okay. all right, well, that's all I need to do. Like, so let's start looking for the pieces that I need. Let's start defining what the problem actually is. Let's start like going through the mechanics and just separate the belief thing out entirely. That's not really important. Whether you can or can't, you'll figure that out along the way. Like, just go, I'm going to give it a shot, and these are the steps that I need to take.
Yeah, that's good, man. That's really good. Number two is every idea needs a home. And so your brain is incredible. Everyone's brain, like the human brain is the most complicated thing that we know exists. And even as great as AI tools are, they cannot now, nor will they ever be able to do everything that a human brain can do. But there's one thing that your brain's not that good at that we ask it to do a lot, and that's remembering things. And so ideas are these kind of fleeting momentary things. And we've all had an experience of like, we wake up with an idea that solves the problem. And you're like, that's it. I've been beating my head against this forever. And it's the middle of the night. And you're like, yes, it's like this eureka moment. And then you look over at the clock and it's not the middle of the night and your alarm's going to go off in 20 minutes. And so you're like, I'm still tired. I'm just going to go back to sleep. And then when I wake up, I'll write all this down. And then you wake up 20 minutes later and the idea's gone. You're like, I remember it was really great. And I remember it was going to solve everything. And, or we've had the experience of like, somebody tells you their name. And then you're like, remember their name. It's Dwayne, it's Dwayne, it's Dwayne, it's Dwayne. And then like 5 minutes later that your friend comes up and they're like, oh, who's this? And you're like, this is, and it just deletes it. Like your brain is not a good filing cabinet. And so I always say, like, if you want to keep an idea, keep it somewhere safe. Like if you want to make sure that that's going to be there later, don't trust your brain, because your brain just doesn't have a good track record at that. So write it down. And that does two things. Like one, it keeps it because there's a good reason humans started writing stuff down, and it's that like paper and pen, or ink on paper, or a chiseled reed into a clay tablet, or a whatever recording mechanism we use, it doesn't change it later. It doesn't go back. Like you don't write like his name is Dwayne, and then later when you look at it, it says his name is Jeff. Like the ink stays the same. So the idea is preserved there. But the other thing that it does is when you build that habit of I have an idea, I write it down, that tells your brain, oh, he likes ideas. Oh, she likes ideas. Like that's important to them. And so then your brain starts to go like, oh, I feel bad. Now I've been throwing these in the trash this whole time. I got tons of ideas if you want ideas. And so it teaches your brain this is an important thing. And so I think it's important to capture ideas when you have them. One of the things that I tell business owners all the time is that if nothing else, one of the best things that you could do to just get this process started is give everyone notebooks on your team. Just give them a pocket notebook and go, hey, here's the things I want you to start looking for. Here's like this week, here's a focus. Like this week, look for what are things that are making our customer service process like inefficient, or what's the number one complaint that we get, and like how might we fix that? And when you give someone a target, their brain kind of locks onto that, and then go, every time you have one, write it down. Even if it sounds like the dumbest thing in the world, write it down. And then at the end of that week, we're all going to come back and talk about it. But also inside of an organization, like that's an idea of home for an individual. Inside of an organization, an idea needs a home to live. And so what I mean by that is, if I work for you on your team, do I know like what are the problems that are keeping you up at night? What are the things that like as a leader you're stressing about or struggling with or you can't figure out? Do I know even what those are? Because oftentimes the answer is no. Like we talked about, leaders think I've got to solve the problem myself. I got to keep all this inside, or I don't want to burden my staff with this. So do I know what those problems are? And then number two, this is just as important. Do I know how to suggest a solution? Like if I have an idea that could solve that problem, where do I put that idea? Who do I tell it to? How do I submit it? What's our process for vetting ideas? What kind of like, how do we sort out the good ones from the bad? How do we separate the wheat from the chaff? How do we, like, what resources do we have available? If I have an idea, like, do we have any kind of like money or team or time or supplies to test out that idea and see if it'll work? Like if I don't know the first couple steps of that process and I'm an employee, then when an idea comes into my head, it doesn't do you any good because I don't know where to put it. And so nothing happens to it. And there are so many times, I mean, I have a story that I've told on stage a bunch of times of I was working with a client and it was this big chemical company. And they had this really innovative, like green chemical that was biodegradable. It replaced a lot of these like really nasty actors in the industry that it was in. And it was just going really well. And then at a conference, their chief technology officer, who's like a PhD chemist, was talking to another chemist. And the guy goes, man, that molecule or chemical that you guys have developed is really interesting. If you could get it to do this one other thing, that'd be really helpful in our industry.
And the guy goes, I think I could get it to do that. So he goes up, makes a new formulation, comes back. That becomes like this other whole line of business. And then the CEO hears that story and he's like, I bet there's not just two of these. I bet there's a lot of places that this chemistry could adapt. And he goes back to his team, his whole team of all these PhD chemists. And he's like, does anybody else know any other applications for this chemical? And immediately this woman raises her hand and she's like, yeah, I just came from this other industry and our stuff would work great over there. And they open up a new line in that industry and it becomes multi-million-dollar line of business. And he went back to her and he's like, that's like, thank you so much for sharing that. That's great. Like, why didn't you tell me that before? And she said, because you didn't ask. Like in her mind, she's showing up to work every day. She's given a list of tasks to do. She's given responsibilities. She's getting good performance reviews. She keeps getting raises. All signs point to you are doing every aspect of your job well. And she was. Like at the end of the day, it's not her job to give ideas to the CEO until he makes it her job. And so if you make it other people's job and say, hey, you know what? Part of your role is I want you to show me the stuff that I can't see. Part of your role is like, help me crack this code because I can't do it on my own and I need your help. And if you build an environment like that, like one, you get better ideas, you get more ideas, you get access to ideas that your competitors couldn't have because they don't have the exact same inputs that you have. But also you create an environment that people don't want to leave. Because if I work somewhere and my ideas have a fighting chance, and this thing that started out as just this inkling in my head, now it's a product line or it's a service thing, or I get to help run this division, or I'm financially rewarded, or however that gets set up. Like if you do that right, people go, why would I ever go anywhere else? This is a dream.
Yeah. I just wrote down you're rewarding people for the behavior that you want. Whether that's money, it doesn't have to be money either. It just could be recognition. It could be praise. It could be, because not every idea is going to be the idea, but if you're continually rewarding people for that behavior, it's a really like, I mean, it's a phenomenal point for the listeners to be thinking like, how are we rewarding our people?
Yeah, my dad worked in manufacturing for a long time, and he told me that a quote that stuck with him was somebody once told him, every system is perfectly tuned to get the results that it is currently getting. And so whatever results you're getting, whether so often we go like, well, I keep gaining weight or whatever. And you're like, why is this happening? It's because the number of calories that you're putting into your body is perfectly tuned to get the weight gain that you're getting right now. And the same thing is true of your business. If you're like, why aren't we profitable? And you're like, well, the way that you're running your revenue, your profit and loss is perfectly tuned to run your business into the ground the way that you're doing that. And so if you want to change that, you got to change what you're doing. You have to change the behaviors and the beliefs, the expectations and the P&Ls and all of that stuff to get the results that you're getting. If you, like your current system, if you're like, yeah, my employees don't give me any ideas, congratulations. You have built a perfect system where employees will not give you ideas. And so if you want a different result, then you have to build a different system for that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's beautiful, man. That's a great point. Okay.
Number three, the
Loving
third
this.
thing that
Thank you, buddy. This is so good. This is really good for people. Like you have no idea. Like, thank you.
I appreciate it, man. Yeah. The third thing that an idea needs is a time and place. And that one is just kind of about not hesitating. Like you and I have birthdays, and mine was 2 days ago. The reason that my birthday is 2 days ago is because 40 years ago I was due and it was time, and I had to come out of the warm, safe environment of my mother's womb and out into the world. And in order to be here today, that had to happen at some point. The same thing is true of every idea. In order to really actually exist in a way that makes any kind of impact in people's life, an idea has to come out of the warm, safe, consequence-free environment of your head, and it has to go out into the world. And that has to happen at a specific time in a specific place. But the problem is it doesn't actually matter all that much when it happens, as much as it matters that it happens. And what we do is we put so much pressure on, I need to find the perfect time and the perfect place and the right opportunity, the right moment. And because we know that that's clearly not right now, like Dwayne, I can't be launching an idea right now because we're on a podcast and that would be weird. And then we're going to get done with this. And then I'm going to see that I've got a missed call from my kid's school and one of them threw up or something, or like there's always going to be a fire to put out or disaster to avert or something. And so there's always a reason why now's not the right time and why tomorrow might be a little bit better. But the problem is tomorrow's going to come and the next day is going to feel better. And so at some point you got to go, this is when I'm bringing this thing into the world. I'm going to pick the best time that I can, but I'm going to optimize for now. I'm going to default to now's as good a time as any. And the story I tell on stage about that is that during the pandemic, I had a friend who I would always send these TikTok videos to, and he would always go, Kyle, these are great, but like, why aren't you posting on TikTok? Like, you're really funny and the internet loves dumb projects and that's kind of your whole thing. And I was like, I think I missed the window. Like, there had been this kind of big gold rush right before the pandemic when everybody on TikTok was blowing up and having viral videos. And I was like, I think I missed that. That was like a year ago. And I used that as like an excuse to not post for almost an entire year. Like, all the time I would be sending my friend these videos and he would go, these are great, man, but like, why aren't you posting videos? And then when I finally posted videos on TikTok, on my third video, I went from 17 followers to 1 million followers. And that changed like the course of my business, my trajectory, my life. And so it opened so many doors for me. And that all happened off a video that I almost didn't post because I almost didn't post any of them because I was waiting for the right time and the right place. And so that's the third thing that every idea needs is a time and place. You got to find, you stop making excuses, figure out make your best shot, but don't optimize for it might get better tomorrow. One of the things I say on stage is I have a really particular skill set, which is that I'm very good at getting rich in the past. Like, show me any time in history and I can show you exactly how I would have been rich during that time. I can show you I'll buy at the bottom and I'll sell at the top. Like, it's really easy. But in the present and the future, like, my results are to be determined because I don't know where the bottom and the top is right now. And I only know where I'm at and I don't know when it's going to turn and when it's going to get better or worse. And so that same thing is true for opportunities. Tomorrow might be a great opportunity. It might be a disaster, right? Every day before there's before a war starts or there's a natural disaster, or there's a terrorist attack, the day before that, nobody has any idea that's coming. Nobody has any idea. And the same thing is true of the day before a new technology gets invented that makes everything easier, whatever. Nobody has any idea those things are coming. You just make your best guess. So tomorrow might be better. It might be worse. This might be the best time in the next 10 years to launch your business. It might be the worst time. Odds are pretty good it's going to be somewhere in the middle of that. And so like you won't know until the time is gone. And then you can look back and go, oh, that was the perfect time to buy Bitcoin. That was the perfect time to launch this idea. That was the perfect time for this. Too late, dude. That time is already gone. So you've got now, but I will pretty much guarantee 10 years from now, whether today is the best time or the worst time, whatever you started, you'll wish you had started earlier. That is almost universally true. People who are successful go, I wish I would have started earlier because now I know that there weren't all these barriers in the way and that all the things that I thought would stop me didn't actually stop me. And so I wish I would have started earlier.
Yeah, that's so true. That is so true, man. I've said that 1,000,000 times. I don't even know how to feel about your buddy that said your ideas were dumb and they should be on TikTok.
You said it lovingly, but I mean, he's also not wrong. I mean, the video that went viral was me photoshopping my dad's head tilted sideways. So, but yeah, he was like, he said, you know, you're an idiot and all your projects are dumb and the internet loves stuff like that. But he said it from a place of love. So yeah, I can take it.
That's funny, but it's true. Like, you know, the story about your dad's, like the picture of your dad and stuff is awesome. And what you did with that, like to get 1 million views, I mean, how long?
1 million followers.
How long was that?
68 million views.
Shit.
And that video is, I think it's only a minute long because at the time that was as long as a TikTok video could be. And I did the math one time because there's a stat on the backside of TikTok. It'll show you watch time stats and it'll show you like the average time that somebody watches a video and when do they tune out or whatever. But it also shows cumulative watch time, which is like total amount of time. If you added up all the time that's been spent watching this video, here's how long it is. And it's almost as long as my dad's been alive. Like it's 60 or 70 years of human life was wasted watching this dumb video about my dad. And so, yeah. And I thought, it's a funny idea, but it's like so particular to it's the whole story for those who haven't seen it, is there's a family portrait from like, it would probably been 1988. Cause my brother wasn't born yet and he was born in 88. So my mom's probably pregnant in this picture. And it's my whole family's there. And then my dad, for whatever reason, the photographer got just my dad to tilt his head really far. And so then when it came back, my dad's like, I look like such an idiot. This picture's so bad. But my mom likes the picture, so it's hung in our home for a long time. So I decided I'm going to fix my dad's head and make it straight for him. And then while I was doing it, I was like, you know, it'd be even funnier. I should tilt everybody else's head at the original angle that my dad's head was tilted at. And it is a funny idea, but it's also like so particular to my family. Like you have to know all of this kind of background story. And I thought, man, no one's going to care about this. I just shot the video because I'd already gone to all the work of doing the Photoshop thing. And I'm like, I'll just tell this story. But what I realized is that like, I didn't realize at the time, and I realize now, is that there's this quote from the writer James Joyce. He says, "In the particular is contained the universal." And he says that in the context of somebody asked him why he always writes about the city of Dublin. Like all of his books, he talks about Dublin. And he said, because if I can get to the heart of Dublin, I can get to the heart of any city in the world. And then he said, in the particular is contained the universal. And what I realized is that the thing that actually connects about that story is how particular it is that it is this like really idiosyncratic story about somebody who's embarrassed about a photograph and doesn't like it, and it continues to hang in their house. And that is such a universal truth. All of us have a family portrait that we're like, oh my gosh, I look at my haircut, look at my mustache. Why was I wearing that outfit? Whatever. And so like that became this universal connection. I couldn't have drawn those dots. I couldn't have connected those dots or drawn that trajectory when I made that video. I posted it to 17 followers, not 1,700, not 17,000, 17 individual followers. And 24 hours later, or 25 hours later, I had 1 million. And that became like just the rocket ship that launched. Today I have 2.9 million followers on TikTok, and it opened all these doors and stuff. And it came out of like, I'm just going to keep chasing these ideas.
It's really crazy. It's a phenomenal story. And it's so cool but it's also like, you just risk being, like, as your buddy says, risk being dumb, risk being, right. If you're okay with people judging you, and that also oftentimes is the stopping point of where we take an idea that could have been or would have been, and just let go of the fear and do your thing.
Yeah. I think about like, I wish that we lived in a world where like, I don't know if I do. Sometimes there's this wish that we lived in a world where like, that it didn't matter, if you put yourself out there or not, or like how, like, it's just about the quality of the idea and who has the idea. But we don't live in that world. And I think about the phrase must be present to win. When you buy like a raffle ticket at a basketball game, it always says must be present to win. And we've all been to a raffle where they call out the number and they call it out again, and that person isn't there. And then so they go on to the next one. And I think that must be present to win is a pretty good life philosophy of like, yes, you do have to work hard. You do have to, have talent and all that. But you also have to put yourself out there. You have to give yourself that opportunity. There are plenty of people who are funnier than I am, who are smarter than I am, who have better ideas than I do, but they didn't put their videos on TikTok at the time that I did. And so they weren't present to win. And I think that that's true of anything. Like whatever business you're trying to start, whatever book you're trying to write, whatever thing that you're trying to do, I guarantee you there's someone who could do it better than you. There's someone who is more talented. There's someone who's richer. There's someone who has better connections. But guess what? If, first of all, that's not any of your business, it has nothing to do with you. But second of all, if they don't do it, then it doesn't matter how much potential they had or how much better they could have done it. People will always tell you how they could have done all this stuff. And those people are getting lapped by the people who are actually out there doing it.
Yeah. It's such a true point, man. It's so good. 4 is the Bodyguard, right?
Yeah. So the fourth thing is a bodyguard. And I talk about ideas are really powerful. I mean, one idea can change the world. That's like such a cliche thing, but we're watching it happen right now with AI. Like the AI went from this kind of sci-fi thing that maybe in the future it'll exist. And it felt to me like overnight it was here. I remember the first time I used ChatGPT, and this was like the first, early generation ChatGPT, which like now looks like child's play. And I was like, this is insane. This is changing everything. And that's exactly what's happened. But at the beginning, every idea is really fragile. And I mean, like, imagine the time and resources and attention and programmers and all that had to be poured in to make that happen when everyone else who had ever tried to build an AI had failed. And it hadn't worked. And it had like, it was like it was almost a joke of like how much this is never going to happen. And then all of a sudden it did. And the only reason it did was because people kept the hope alive and they bodyguarded that vision until it could become reality. Every idea sounds stupid when you boil it down and when it's the first time you've ever heard it. The example I give in my talk is democracy. Totally changed the world, and it's by and large a great idea. And if you were the first person to come up with it, the king probably killed you, right? If you were like, hey, what if instead of him telling us what to do, what if we kind of all decided? The king's like, cut his head off, right? So like at the beginning, an idea is really fragile and you got to give it a shot. And the reason that's important, especially in an organization, is that every organization has a devil's advocate. And even for individuals, we're often our own devil's advocate, that we come up with a list of all the reasons that it won't work and we talk ourselves out of it. But especially if you get around other people, that's going to happen. As soon as you launch an idea into the world, people are going to tell you all the reasons why it won't work. And the reality is they might be right, they might be wrong, but you don't know. And so in the beginning, you got to, like, I just say, give it a second, man. Like, when someone has, my friend just had a baby a couple weeks ago, and I'm not like, you know what, let's get this kid in the gym. Let's see, like, what's the bench press max, right? It's like, no, let's let it figure out how to crawl first, and then walk, and then like run. And then we'll start working on like athleticism, right? We don't put a kid into the major leagues right away. We're like, why can't it hit the ball? Because you got to give it a second, dude. Like, let it get its feet underneath it. And then we'll start trying to make it better. The same thing is true of ideas. You got to give them like a protective environment and say, hey, before we bring in the devil's advocate, before, the guy at every job who's like, hey, thinks it's his job to tell everyone why their idea won't work, before you let that guy hear about the idea, like maybe protect it. That's why organizations have like Boeing and Apple, they have these like skunk works divisions that are often in another building somewhere else, the research and development lab. It is sort of isolated and separated so that those ideas can have a fighting chance. They can have a chance to be bad. They can have a chance to fall. They can have a chance to fail. And then once you're like, oh, okay, we're working the kinks out. Now it's got its legs under it. Now it's starting to grow up a little bit. Okay, it can survive some criticism now. So now let's criticize it. Now let's go, okay, cool. Where are the holes in this thing? How do we make this thing stronger? What can we do? And so in the beginning, you got to bodyguard those ideas until they have like enough strength to withstand the criticism. Otherwise, you're going to wipe a lot of great ideas off the table. Everyone probably on earth has had an idea that had a lot of potential and seemed so promising. And then they made the mistake of showing the wrong person too early. And that person laughed and they went, pfft, and that little just blew that idea out the window. And so to prevent that, you've got to like give the idea a second to figure out what it's going to be wrong, to be messy, to be inefficient or whatever. And then go, okay, like we've done this a little while. We've given it a bodyguard. I think it has a shot. Now let's make it better.
As you were like saying all that, I was thinking the phrase, like, if you want to know what your life is like, look at the 5 people that you hang around with most.
Yeah.
And it, like, that's what kind of popped into my head as you were saying that stuff. And I was thinking, but it's not just because, you could be a business person and you could, have a great, circle of influence around you, but they may not be creative influences. They could be business structure. Like they may, maybe it's sales, maybe it's, oh, you can't sell that. Like, but yeah, it's an interesting kind of take where it's like, do you have these micro forums in your life where you know where to go to depending on what you're trying to accomplish? And I'm not just talking about, creativity and innovation, but I'm also thinking about other things too. It's like, because oftentimes the place we come to is like either our best friend or home. And, you're only getting the feedback based on, other people's experiences and perception of the world.
Yeah, I think that's a great point. And I think that like other people's perception, like we are social creatures. And as much as, especially business owners like to go like, oh, I'm this maverick, whatever, I'm out there on my own. No, you're not, dude. We are all social creatures. And so like there are people in everyone's life. You're like, oh, I don't talk to this person about a fight that I'm having with my wife because I know that they're going to take my side and they're going to tell me, oh, you know what? Yeah, she's wrong and she's a jerk and you don't need her and all this kind of stuff. You're like, okay, I'm not going to talk to that person about my marriage because that's not going to be good for my marriage. Like what I need is somebody going, okay, let me tell you how to navigate this. And she's actually not wrong and you're actually not wrong. Like, and the same thing is I have friends in my life who I love and cherish and care about. But I know that when I tell them an idea for the first time, they're going to tell me why it won't work. And so I don't tell them my ideas until I've already made the decision, until I've already like launched it. And then I go, hey, I made this thing. And then because it's like some of that's like just a psychological thing. If somebody tells me, or if I tell somebody an idea before it's launched, that person thinks, okay, they want feedback. It's still, malleable, whatever. And so they kind of beat it up a lot. If it's already launched, then they just go, oh man, that's cool. Great job. And all the same criticisms might be in their head, but they're not going to say them. And so I think it is about figuring out, like, what am I looking for here? What does this idea need right now? And this idea probably needs a bodyguard. And if that person isn't going to be it, then I need to find somebody who will. And I need to not expose this thing to that right now, in the same way that, like, hey, if I've got an immunocompromised kid and, there's a play date at a preschool, I'm probably not going to take them because they're going to get sick. So, like, I'm not going to take my idea to a place where it's probably going to get killed until it's ready, to go into the arena.
Yeah. That's good. Number 5.
Last thing that every idea needs is a crew. And so there's this myth in the American psyche of, like, the self-made man or the self-made woman. And it's just, there's no such thing as that. Nobody is self-made, because all of us are a product of, yes, our hard work and the risks that we took and the sacrifices we made. Absolutely, that's a part of it. But there is another key ingredient, which is all of the other people who supported us along the way, all of the systems that existed, all of the resources, all of the luck, all of that comes together. The problem is that stuff doesn't sell books. And so when you read about successful people, what they do is they kind of white all that stuff out of the story. And, I have this joke I say on stage of, like, every successful person's story, it really boils down to one of 3 stories. The first one is that they were part of a community and they all worked together and they learned from each other and they collaborated. And then for whatever reason, their career took off farther than other people's, but it was still based in all of the stuff that they got from that community. The second story is that person was tremendously talented, but they had, like, there were barriers in their way. Maybe they had bills to pay. Maybe they didn't, they had to work a job all the time, or they had to mow the lawn or pay the bills or send the kids off to school or pack the lunches. And then somebody comes along who can remove those barriers. Sometimes that's a spouse. Sometimes it's a supportive, friend. Sometimes it's like a job that says, hey, there are some people out there who like, if you put them in the right role, they would just absolutely thrive, but they just haven't been put in that role. And then all of a sudden someone goes, hey, I think you'd be good at this. And boom, it unlocks that potential for them, but it wouldn't have happened without that person. And then the third thing that some successful people have is called rich parents. And, like, their parents are rich and they paved the way for them. That's actually most of it. Most of the time it's rich parents. And so, but then regardless of which of those 3 stories is actually true, what most people do is, as soon as they become successful, the first check they write is to a PR firm that's going to go white out their Wikipedia and delete all of the links to anybody else's story so that it looks like they did it all themselves. The reality is that's just a myth. It's not true, and it's damaging. I always say creativity is a team sport because life is a team sport. You are not designed to do any of this stuff on your own. And even if you did, what would be the point of it all? If you made all of this stuff, you achieved everything, but you don't have other people to share that with, and you don't have other people who went on that journey with you, it sounds boring and sad and lonely. And I think that, like, when you realize, oh, maybe the reason I haven't solved this problem is because I, for some reason, convinced myself that I have to do it myself. Yeah, that's probably part of it, right? Like, part of the solution might just be in the head of somebody else who you haven't been vulnerable enough to ask. And you haven't been, like, open enough to say, hey man, I'm stuck on this thing. What am I not seeing here? And so that's that creativity is a team sport thing. Every idea needs a crew. And if you're stuck on something, it might just be because part of the solution is inside the head of somebody else.
You were saying earlier that you had spoke at one of Tony Robbins' business mastery events. And one of the philosophies he has is people will do more to move away from pain than they will towards pleasure. When you hear that statement, how do you apply, creativity, innovation inside your organization with that in mind, in terms of, like, yeah, you need a team, you get bodyguard, all of these 5 pieces, but there's that piece where it's like, man, what if you don't? What's the pain?
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Yeah. So you mentioned earlier that I have this book behind me, How to Host a Viking Funeral. And so what that came out of was, so 10 years ago, I just turned 40. 10 years ago, when I was about to turn 30, I was talking to my mom and she was like, hey, if you want to have some friends over and have a party at our house, because my house wasn't like as good for entertaining. And she's like, you can do that because my parents live out in the country. She's like, you could have a bonfire or something. And that kind of sparked this idea. And I was like, oh, what should I do? And she goes, are you going to have like a fun birthday party? And I said, no, I'm going to have a Viking funeral for my 20s to celebrate the death of my 20s. And so that became the kind of thing. And I was like, I'm going to build a big cardboard and hot glue Viking ship. And then I'm going to put my 20s into it. I just made these giant, like 8-foot tall letters that said my 20s. And then I set it on fire. And it was this really like ornate, the ship was about 8 feet tall and 16 feet long. It was about the size of like a minivan or something. And it had all these like ornate hand glued scales. And it was a really beautiful piece of sculpture that I made.
Dude,
and then I
cool.
set the whole thing on fire. Yeah. So I did that. And then some of my friends made a video about it. And in that video, they asked me like, are you going to be sad to burn this thing that you worked so hard on? And I was like, no, man, you got to let go of the past to make room for new things in the future. And it was just kind of this offhanded remark. And that became like kind of what the video ended up being built around, was this core thesis of like letting go of the past, making room for new things in the future. And so that video kind of started to go viral. This is, a much smaller scale. This is way before TikTok. And I started getting emails from people saying like, man, your weird birthday party kind of inspired me to think about my life and like things that I want to let go of. And then they would all kind of end the email with this like little joke of like, yeah, I just wish I could let go of my stuff with a Viking funeral. And so I get one email like that, and then I get 2 emails like that. And then it's like a year later, I'm still getting these emails. And I was like, oh, I think people want me to do this again. So I said, I'm going to host a Viking funeral, and I'm going to ask people to send me all their regrets and anything that you want to let go of, anything that you're like, you know what, that's the person I used to be. That's not who I want to be anymore. And then, so I built a much bigger ship. It was 16 feet tall and 30 feet long. And it was filled with 21,000 regrets from people all over the world. And then I read every single one of those regrets. And I wrote this book about like, what did I learn from that process? And so when you talk about like moving away from fear, I think that like the fear that helps me to kind of like push past, like one fear kind of overrides another fear. The fear of like what will people think, or what if it doesn't go right or whatever. I've learned that like I'm actually more afraid of regret than I am of failure. If I fail, I've survived that lots of times, but and like the day after failure, if you're still alive, then you're like, well, it wasn't an ultimate failure. I'm still here. I can still keep going. But the regret, that doesn't go away. And like people, you'll always be able to ask, what if I would have done that? What if I would have tried? And so when it comes to, I think Tony Robbins is right about that we are more motivated by pain than pleasure. And so we got to go, okay, well, what's the pain that I'm not thinking about that I can use as a motivator? I mean, to be honest, like I didn't grow up with a ton of money. I didn't grow up like dirt poor or anything, but it was always just like a little bit tighter than I would have preferred. And I saw, like, I went to a private school, and we went there because like that was my parents' church ran this school. So like for them, it was a religious education thing. For a lot of the kids that went there, it was like, this is a private school. And so we're going to go because of that. So like my best friend in middle school, his grandpa sold his company for $900 million a few years ago. Like he's set for life. And that was not my experience. And so for me, like a lot of the reason I got into entrepreneurship, a lot of the reason I worked as hard as I've worked and did all the stuff that I've done was because of this fear of like, I don't want to run out of money. I don't want to ever get to a point where like I've been poor a lot of times. And then when I first got married, I mean, I had a house that the roof started leaking, and I got a quote to fix it. It was $600. And that might as well have been $1 million. I just didn't have it. And I saved up for months to save up $600. And so like that fear of going back to that place has pushed me forward. And I think that the same thing is true of like, I've been in places where I'm like, I wanted to do this thing and I didn't do it. And now I will never know what would have happened. And I don't ever want to go back to that place. And so I do use that fear as like, you know what? I'm more afraid of that than I am of what if it goes wrong.
Does it ever work against you sometimes where that fear is like, then it stops you from taking a risk that you might, would have, but you're like, I don't want to put these chips on the table and risk those.
I mean, probably, but I think that I have over time gotten better at learning which risks are worth taking. I think that, if there was a situation like I'm not a gambler. My wife and I went to Vegas for a fitness competition she was a part of a couple months ago. And it was interesting because like one of the other guys on our team was like he goes to Vegas a bunch, and he was playing blackjack and all this stuff. And we played a couple hands, but I was like, there's just nothing appealing to me about this at all. Like, it's fun to sit here with your friends and have a drink in a casino or whatever. But I was watching people just like lose thousands of dollars. And so like that kind of a risk is never worth it to me. But if it's a calculated risk where I go, okay, I've seen that this could pay off. Last year I spent I wrote a bigger check than I've ever written in my life to have a completely new speaker demo video, because I was like, I have a vision for what this could be, and I'm willing, and I think that this could help get me there. I also knew it might not do that, but it will be better than the thing that I, currently have. And that paid off. So I think it doesn't cause me to play small. It causes me to play smart. I think that's like, and to be more strategic. And I think that's a huge benefit, that it's not like, okay, I'm afraid of losing my money. It's not like the parable of the talents or whatever, where I'm like, okay, I just got to bury this in the ground. It's like, hey, I've got to do the most that I can with this. So how do I be strategic and smart about it? And then as I've become more successful and that fear has like receded into the background, now I know, what, like, there were years when I was like, if the phone rang and it was my bank, I was like, oh man, this is not good. Now I'm like, they're calling to ask me if I want a credit card. They do this every 6 months. It's no big deal. So like that fear is receded, and I can take a little bit bigger risks, but I'm never going to be a guy who's like, just put it all on black or I, take some big swing and throw I've just seen, like, I think that fear is still there in a healthy way, where I'm never going to sacrifice like my family's well-being or my retirement savings or something on a long shot.
Dude, I love the, don't let risk make you play small, have it make you play smart. I paraphrased your thing. But...
Yeah. I think that's really, that's the ticket right there.
Invariably part of your business, like obviously you're a speaker, but part of your business is, I guess, well, you've got so many multiple streams of income with books and the speaking, but part of it is social media exposure, right? Like you're putting these ideas out there. How does that like play out for you? And, it's, to me, it's like a miniature, it's not like the beast, but it's like you're putting these, the whole thing about the marathon, for example, you're putting this stuff out on social media, and that is all effort, time, energy, focus. How do you weigh that stuff out do you think about?
I mean, that's risk mitigation too. Like for me, that I never do any of these projects if I'm not like, I know how I'm going to pay for it. I know where this is going to fit into my schedule, and I know how this is going to this is not going to sabotage anything else that I'm doing. Like I have projects that I could work on that I think are really cool ideas. But in order to do that, I'm going to have to stop speaking for 6 months or something. And I just go, that's not on the table for me right now. Maybe that's a later idea. Maybe it's a never idea. But so every single one of those projects was very thoughtfully chosen, because I was like, I can get this done with the time and team and resources that I have. I'm thinking inside the box. People look at it and they go, oh, that's a crazy idea. Or how did you come up with that? Or I would never be able to do anything. And I think that that's kind of like the magic is, I had a friend one time that came over to my studio, and I had, this is my old office, and I had all of my creation supplies, all of my like paint pens and markers and hot glue sticks, and like on a pegboard on the wall, and it was all organized. It was all labeled. And she goes, I would have never thought that this is how your office looks. Like based on like the craziness of the stuff that you do and all this, like I would have never thought that. And I was like, Katie, this is the only way I can get stuff done. I have to have this. And so because the projects that I put out are very like odd, and I'm called the patron saint of crazy ideas and all that, I think people think he's just this zany guy. And I'm like, no, there's a strategy behind it. There's a thought behind it. And I'm always weighing, okay, what are the risks and rewards here? What's the best case scenario, worst case scenario? But for me, there is an element within that, which is still like, well, I just want to try. Like the Viking ship was just a silly idea. And then my friends were like, yeah, well, we can make a video about it. I'm like, oh, that could be cool. Let's put that out on the internet. But it wasn't a thing where I was like, I'm going to bet my whole future on becoming a Viking ship guy or something. And then when that project went well, and I saw like the emotional feedback of this thing that I'd really only spent 2 weeks making that Viking ship, I thought, okay, there's enough of a signal here. People keep asking for this. Like I'll try a bigger, riskier version of that. And then I did that one. And then that led to my first, major book deal with a big 5 publisher. And so like, I think each step of the way, I'm looking at what are the options I have? What are the resources I have to work with? How much time, team, money, whatever. And then let's put those things out. And then as those doors open, then I go, okay, like, let's just push it a little bit farther. Let's keep trying it. Like, TikTok was not supposed to be this big strategy for me. After all of those months of waiting and, you know, Andy telling me that I should be putting stuff on the internet, I was like, okay, my goal is, I had seen a couple people who over the course of like 6 or 8 months had built up maybe 150,000, maybe 200,000 followers. And I thought, okay, that seems like not hugely like likely, but it seems possible if I devote myself to this for 6 months. And then what happened was, on the third video that I posted, I hit 1 million followers. And I was like, oh, okay. Once that happened, then I started putting more focus and effort into TikTok. Then I started pitching, you know, brand deals and doing other things like that. But that wasn't like, I wasn't doing all that from the beginning when I had 17 followers. It was after I established, you know, trajectory and career momentum and all of that. Same thing is true with my speaking business. Like I mentioned that I made this video last year that I paid a bunch of money for. That was the first time I had ever paid anyone to do a speaking video, outside of a few minor edits or something. But all the other ones, I had somebody shoot a video, I edited it together, I did all of that stuff. I made my own websites. I did all of that because I was like, I don't want to be shelling out big risky sums of money if I don't know that it'll work. And then once I established that it would work, and I was like, okay, now I can kind of save a portion of this money that I'm making. That'll be kind of my R&D budget, and I'm okay losing that. And then I became, you know, more comfortable taking bigger risks.
Dude, it's incredible. Like, you can see where your statement earlier of you must be present to win is, you know, a sole meta operating system in your mindset to build what you've done. And it's really, 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 really impressive, man. I'm curious, of everything we've talked about, what's the one piece that you'd say we missed so far, that if you were to add something into the conversation to help people? Because I think this mindset, you know, we'll see. Only history, as you said, will determine whether I'm right or wrong. And either way, right now, it doesn't matter. But it's, you know, there's a possibility that a lot of things that are going to get uprooted, and we as humanity, one thing that you're right, that AI will never be able to do is be able to function like humans, and that humanity and that creativity and that experience that we've lived every day of our single lives that make us who we are is what we're going to be able to, if we can harness that and share that with one another. I think that's where the juice is going to be, you know, down the road. And I'm just curious if there's anything based on your experience that we might have missed in the conversation that you'd add in.
I mean, I could keep going about all this stuff forever, Dwayne, but I think that, you know, I mentioned earlier, there's my book that's coming out next year is about this framework for I call it the idea cycle. And it's basically that there are 4 steps that every idea has to go through in order to come into the world. And those steps can happen subconsciously or consciously. They can happen in a moment. They can happen over the period of years or decades or whatever, but these have to happen. And it's called the idea cycle because it spells out IDEA, and it's inspiration, discovery, evolution, and action. So inspiration is, in order to make an idea, you have to connect old ideas that already exist. You have to make things out of things that are already in existence. And the example I give in the book is, in order to build a bicycle, you first have to know that wheels are possible, and that chains are possible, and that gears are possible, and that pedals are possible. Once you discover all those possibilities, then you can go, oh, what if we connected all these things? That's how every idea works. So inspiration is about gathering those items to connect, right? If I say, if it's about connecting the dots, inspiration is where you're collecting the dots. And so you're going, how do I expose myself to new ideas? How do I expose myself to new forms of input or questions or metaphors or mentors or any of those things? Like, how do I gather all those things together? That's inspiration. Discovery is where you actually start making those connections, and you shuffle pieces around. You throw everything on the board and you're like, what if I did this, right? There's this great TED talk from a guy named Damian Kulash, who's the lead singer of a band called OK Go. And they are known for doing these like wildly creative music videos. And he said, people always ask us where we get the ideas for our videos. He said, I don't really feel like we have the ideas. I feel like we discover the ideas, or we notice the ideas. And that's kind of what creativity is like. It's going, hey, if you stand right here, these things kind of line up in a funny way. And so that's the discovery process. And it's not about waiting for a moment of insight. It's about taking all the ideas that you've been exposed to and just intentionally going, what if I took these two together? No, that didn't work. Okay, what if I flipped this one upside down? What if I took half of this one out and replaced it with half of this one? That's all the creativity is. Evolution is about deciding which version of that you want to exist in the world. We talked about that earlier. And then the last one is action. And there's a story I tell in the book that there's a woman named Vivian Meyer, and she is now widely considered one of the most important and influential street photographers of all time. And she died penniless and alone in like a nursing home outside of Chicago. And then after she died, somebody discovered a storage unit that had all these photographs in it that she had taken over the years. And they're like, oh my gosh, these are some of the best photographs we've ever seen. They've been exhibited around the world. They've been like 2 or 3 documentaries have been made about her life. All this stuff happened. She never got to see any of that because she never pushed through that action stage of putting that thing into the world. And so I think that is a stage where so many people get hung up. Is they're like, well, what if I do this, or what if it doesn't go well, or what if I get criticized, or whatever. And they forget there's another what if, which is like, what if there are people that could be inspired or helped by this thing, and I don't bring this to them, right? What if there are people that need this service in their life, or that need this, this product, or they need this painting, or they need this song? What if I don't give it to them? Like, what if I don't get to see what might be possible for my ideas? So that's the idea cycle. There's a whole book about it coming out in January. I would love for all of you to buy it. But when you mentioned AI, and AI is, ironically, it's good at the I and the A of ideas. It's good at the inspiration part and the action part. It's good. Like, AI is good at collecting inspiration. If you say, hey, I'm looking for things that are like this, or, hey, give me some information about this person. I did not do this, but I could have gone, tell me everything you know about Dwayne Kerrigan. And it would have pulled together a whole dossier about you, right? And I can even say, hey, I'm looking for people who are like this, or, hey, I like these 3 paintings. What do they have in common? Or what, and it can go get a lot of information on it. It's good at that kind of stuff. It's also pretty good at the action part. If you say, hey, I've got this product, and I'm trying to, help me make a marketing plan and a launch plan. Who are the top influencers in this space? And, whatever, like research-based stuff, it's good at, because AI is built on pattern recognition. It's like, okay, it went 1, 2, 3, and then you go, what's the next one? It's going to go, it's probably 4. It's a prediction machine. The problem is that's only those are the ends of the process. In discovery and evolution, it's not as good, because those things require you to make choices, and choices that don't have a right or wrong. That's why I come back to that so often. It's like, there isn't a right or wrong in this stuff. And that's why AI can't do it, because it can just tell you what's most likely to happen, or what's most likely to be the thing based on what's happened in the past. And that's not how innovation works. And so, I talk in the book about like disco. Disco music was huge in the 70s. And if you would have had AI in the 70s, AI would have told you how to write the perfect disco song. It would have told you the perfect chord progression, all of that stuff. At the same time, punk music was starting up. And punk music was a visceral reaction to people who were like, I am so tired of hearing disco. If I hear another disco song, I'm going to go crazy. And they were like, I want something that's cheap and that's raw and that's emotional and that's like, I can play in my garage and I don't have to have this expensive studio time and an orchestra, all this other stuff. AI would have never recommended or predicted disco, because AI can't feel the sense of like, I'm so sick of this. You can feel that as a human being, right? And then AI also, when it comes to evolution, going, which version of this do I want to do? Well, that's not a problem with a right or wrong. AI is built on patterns. It's built on, tell me what's right and what's wrong, and I will go look at this and show you, right? That's why AI can do spell check. AI can check your calculations. AI can, make sure that your citations line up in the right way. It can do all that because there's a pattern, and it's like, this is what's right. Tell me if my thing is the same as that. But if I say, hey, Dwayne, I've got this idea, and one version of it is like really true to like my own artistic sensibilities and like what I'm trying to say from my heart, and the other version, I think I could sell 1 million copies. Which one should I go with? There's not a right or wrong answer for that. And so AI can't make that decision for you. But the thing is, AI will make the decision, and it will do it. It will confidently do it in whatever direction it thinks that you want to hear. And so like it, one of the things that I always say is like, to AI, every decision is bold and courageous, right? Like if I say, hey, you know what? I'm thinking about shutting down my business. AI will go, you know what? That's a bold and courageous decision, but you're doing the right thing. And if in the next breath I go, actually, I think I should put my life savings into my business. It'll go, man, that's exactly the right call. You know, it's like, it's a sycophancy machine, and it's going to tell you exactly what you need to hear. And like, it's good for the ends of the process, but you got to do that thing in the middle yourself. You've got to have the skin in the game. You've got to have the taste and distaste and decide what you're going to do and what you're not going to do, which direction you want to go. There's no right or wrong answers for that. There's only right and wrong answers for you in this moment with the things that you have available to you now. And AI can't do that. And so, you know, if there's one thing I didn't touch on, it's just that like the human part of this is so huge, and that like it is an innate part of being a person to go, hey, you know what? The world's like this. I think it'd be cooler if it was like this, if it was like this other way. And I'm going to try that. And I think that, you know, I close my talks with this quote from George Bernard Shaw. He says, the reasonable man adapts himself to the world. The unreasonable one persists in trying to adapt the world to himself. Therefore, all progress depends on the unreasonable man. So everything that's ever pushed us forward in life and business and society, it came because somebody saw the way the world was, and then they saw the way that it could be. And they're like, you know what? I'm going to try for this other one. I'm going to try for option, you know, door number 2. That's the thing that I love the most about human existence, is just that like we have agency. And then if the world is away and we don't like it, we have at least the opportunity to give it a shot and change it.
Yeah, and I love this. Like, this is such a great conversation, and I love how you framed in your new book, you know, the inspiration and action, which is what the AI can do. But I think I was telling you earlier when we started the show briefly that we're building a leadership AI agent architecture that we're running in our company, and then we'll probably it's working so well that we'll probably actually offer it as a product. But essentially, you know, you put it into, you know, my thinking into exact words, which is, you know, the tool and AI in general is there to help us, you know, kind of iterate the thinking, you know, maybe, you know, and this is what we're doing in our leadership architecture is, you know, provide the coaching and the consulting and the thought pattern questioning that we stop doing because we have limiting beliefs, we have fears, we have, you know, past experiences that didn't work out that, you know, tell us and create a story, and we've attached a meaning. And so this architecture that we're building is help us think through it. But you're right on that side, you know, it can help you with the thinking and distilling out, you know, some thoughts. But at the end of the day, you know, the discovery and the evolution is on us. And
and you mentioned the word tool. You said it's an AI tool. And I think that that's something that, like, I talk about this in the book, that a tool, every tool lowers the barrier to entry. It makes something easier. That's why we develop tools. We don't go, hey, you know what? We have a hammer. Let's make a hammer that's worse at hitting nails, right? We always are like, how can we make something better? How can we make it easier or safer or faster or cheaper? That's what tools do. And when you do that, a couple things happen. One is that the barrier to entry gets lowered, right? So now, before you had to know how to write code in order to make a website, and now you don't. And so what that does is it lets in more people. When you let in more people, you get the same swath of results that you got before, but you get more of it. So you do get more good work when you introduce a new tool, but you also get more bad work and more mediocre work. And we talk about like this term AI slop, and I've seen a lot of it. You've seen a lot of it. It's all over. AI slop is not a reflection of the tool. It's a reflection of the people who use the tool. Right. And I'm old enough to remember when Photoshop first became like really, really popular, and like Photoshop made retouching photos and digital editing and all this, it made it so much easier. And what that did was it meant that any kid with Photoshop could do something with it. And that led to, there is so much really bad Photoshop out there. There's also incredible, beautiful images that never would have been possible without Photoshop. So it lowers the barrier to entry. It increases the volume of work, which necessarily increases the volume of bad and mediocre work. And then the third thing that it does is it like starts to replace people who used to do that job. And that's a scary thing, right? Like, because now we go, like you said, we're going to have to start figuring out new ways to do this thing because, or new things for us to do, because the thing that I used to do, now this thing is doing it. But a tool is only as good as the person using it. And a tool can tell you all the right stuff to do. Like you said, a tool can go, hey, you have this limiting belief. You have to be the person that chooses to let go of it, though. You have to be the person that goes, oh yeah, you're right. That is a dumb, wrong belief or whatever. And you have to be the person that chooses to rewire that part of yourself. A tool can say, hey, here's exactly like the right path to take, but you have to be the person to do it. You got to write the check, you got to start the business, you got to do the thing. And so I think that realizing that it is a tool, and then also like, yes, it's great. There are pros and cons. There are massive downsides to AI. There are massive upsides. You can choose to use it or not use it. Like the thing that I always, anytime people are like, oh, the future is this, I'm like, you know what? Everybody who's ever done this in the past did it without that thing. So like, it's still possible to do it without that thing. You might be at a disadvantage. You might, whatever, there's pros and cons, but you can do the creative process with or without it. It's a matter of like, how intentional do you want to be, and what tools do you want to use, and how good do you want to get at them?
Dude, this is a great conversation. We need to have this conversation extended when your book comes out. I would love to have you back on.
I'd love to.
Dude, I'd love to have this. This is, I mean, it's going to be relevant at any time going forward, but this is awesome. I mean, how can people find you, first of all?
It's just my name, Kyle Scheele, KyleScheele. I'm at Kyle Scheele on pretty much every social media platform. KyleScheele.com is my website. Yeah, I mean, that's, there's not a lot of Kyle Scheeles in the world. So if you find one, it's probably me.
Check out the website because his videos are awesome. And that dragon Viking ship that you built is amazing.
I've got a new site coming out in a couple of weeks, or I don't know, maybe sometime this summer. This is 2026 right now. So sometime in the summer of 2026, I've got a totally new site coming out that's going to be even better and more cool stuff on there, more stuff about the idea cycle, and just a lot of great resources there. Yeah,
I really want to get you on. So that's the book is going to be called Idea Cycle?
It's called How Ideas Work.
Oh, How Ideas Work. Sorry.
Yep.
Guys, check out Kyle. First of all, it's like amazing I you will not regret hiring him or bringing him in for your corporate event or whatever event you have going on. And I just, I can't say enough about you, man. I love the spirit. I love the energy. I think that this is the way of the future, creativity, innovation. We all can use more of it, no matter what you can use it in your business life. But if you think you've maxed out there, which you haven't, you can use it with your kids. You can use it with your grandkids. You can use it in your intimate relationships. Like none of this conversation is bound by business. It all, I think, threads through, our lives. And we didn't actually talk much about that. Maybe on the next conversation, we should talk about that when it comes to relationships, because I'm a big fan of that. But anyways, dude.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I think it's interesting because you said, this applies to everything. And as a speaker, like the thing that you're not supposed to say when bureaus and agents and clients, they'll always ask like, well, what crowd is your message best for? Who does this resonate most with? And the thing you're not supposed to say is, oh, it's for everybody. I can speak to everybody. But I've had bureau agents and clients and stuff pull me aside and go, you know what? Like that's true. But for you, you can actually say it because creativity really is for everyone. And the thing that there are a lot of speakers who jump from trend to trend. There are a lot of speakers who suddenly have become AI experts in the last 20 minutes or whatever, because AI is like a hot speaking topic. Well, in a couple of years, there will be a new trend. There will be some new topic. And I just don't want to trend hop. I think it's a poor career strategy because by the time you get there, the trend's already moving on. But second, I think that creativity it's never going to go away because, like I said earlier, creativity is problem solving, and there will always be a new problem to solve. There's always, whether that's a relational problem, like you said, whether that's a business problem, whether that's an interpersonal problem, whether that's a resource problem, there's always going to be a problem to solve. And creativity is just about figuring out, how do I solve that problem? Because I know there's going to be another one right behind it.
Yeah. I'd frame this to, for the listeners, when you guys are listening to this, it's like, if you have a pain point in your life and it's not maybe in your business, but it might be in your relationship, it might be with your kids, you can take those 5 tools that Kyle was talking about, and you can just apply those directly into wherever the pain is. And if you're not innovating, you're dying. And that is just the truth. So I just love, buddy, I created this podcast because I had nothing else to do with my time. No, I don't advertise this thing. I don't try to make money off of it, which is probably stupid. And I probably need to get more creative and innovative around that. But But I did it because I wanted to have people just like you on the podcast to talk about these kinds of things where pain kind of starts to fester in our lives. And this is like where you got to think outside the box a little bit, guys, and apply these things. I mean, you apply these little things, just the simple little things, not simple, but to one simple little thing like date night with your wife or your husband. And you watch how your relationship changes, you know, so it can be as
and you
simple
watch how
as
it changes everything. Like it changes, like that's kind of, it's so hard for me, you know, at the beginning when you were talking about where did all this stuff come from, or when people ask like, how did you push past this? And I realized like, it's because I've been doing this for 20 plus years now. And that you start realizing that you can apply these tools everywhere. And you go, hey, you know what? Like this person said that this was a rule and then I broke that rule and it worked out fine. Maybe all of these rules are made up. Maybe these rules about how I'm supposed to run my house are made up. Maybe these rules about like what's, you know, how vulnerable I can or can't be with my spouse. Maybe they're not set in stone, and you start going, hey, I actually have a lot more agency and a lot more power and a lot more creative ability than I thought. You know, I have a note card I'm a big fan of writing things on note cards and taping them to the wall. And I have one over here that my friend Andy, who I've mentioned like 100 times in this thing already, but he said one time, he said, you are here to see what this gift of a life can do. And I use that metaphor all the time with my kids and with clients and stuff. I go, the human experience is like you're dropped into this race car, but you don't know it's a race car. And then all of a sudden one day you're like, how fast can this thing even go? And you're like, there's a wide open road in front of me and I don't even know. And this whole time I've been driving it at 35 miles an hour. And I think that like I don't know what the limits of my abilities are. I don't know what the limits of my intellect are, my creativity. I don't know any of those things are. And so I'm just going to keep trying to push it and find them. And the more I do, the more I'm like, wow, there's so much here. And I think that that's true of all of us, that once you start applying these tools and start realizing, that's why I hammer it so hard that every human being is creative, because once you start accepting that, then you realize, oh, okay, I can be creative, like you said, in my relationships. I can be creative with my kids. I can be creative with how I parent or how I lead. I can be creative with the business that I run. Like, it's insane that we all decided that everyone should work the exact same amount of time, right? That every job is 40 hours a week and all those 40 hours are 9 to 5 or whatever, 8 to 5. And some people go, you know what? No, I'm going to run a totally different business. I'm going to do something where I only work on the weekends so that I can, you know, be there to take my kids to school every day, or be there with my disabled grandchild or whatever. Like, you can do whatever you want. You can live your life however you want. And I think that's just the coolest thing, that we have the opportunity to make an impact on the universe. And that when we do that, that becomes an inspiration to other people, because they see, oh, hey, Dwayne did it that way. You know what? I didn't know that was allowed. And now, yay, that inspires them, and then they inspire other people. And then it sends this ripple effect out, like you talked about.
Yeah, it's funny that you ended on that, because I'll just add on, because that was perfect. And as you were talking, I was thinking, you know, here's the extra bonus. We pretty much all of humanity. I mean, I've been to a lot, like I've been all over the place, and I've had opportunities to be, you know, cross-cultural. And the one thing that I think is universal is that we all want, no matter where we live, who we are, what religion, what our country, our beliefs, is we all want our kids to have a better life than we did. And if you want your kid to have a better life than you do, you show up with more creativity, more innovation, and I promise you, they will adapt that skill and they will have a better life than you did. And that to me is the massive push. And that essentially was, you know, what I took from what you were saying there. So
yeah, absolutely, man.
Buddy.
Dwayne, this has been super fun, man. I really enjoyed this conversation, and I look forward to doing it again.
I would love to have you back. This was fantastic. Thanks, brother. Appreciate your time.
Of course. Thank you.
Okay. Cheers, bud. Thanks for listening. I appreciate you being with us. If you found value in the show and know a friend or coworker who could benefit from this conversation, please share the link. Remember, each share creates a ripple effect of knowledge and inspiration. And if this podcast has supported you in any way, please support us by clicking the follow or subscribe button.